The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello. Welcome to the Personal Productivity, Getting More Done in Less Time webinar. My name is Katie Stovall, and I will be your technical producer and moderator this evening. This webinar will be presented by Kelly McGarrick, and our goal this evening is to help you get ready to spend your time working in CAPA and be as productive as possible. Before we start the presentation, let's take a moment to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the webinar control panel. On the right side of your screen, you will see the attendee control panel, and on the left is the webinar viewer window. The viewer window will display the presenter screen when the webinar begins. The control panel can be minimized or expanded by clicking on the horizontal double arrow button in the upper left corner. Minimizing the panel allows a better view of the presentation. Take a moment to practice. There are a few features of the control panel that you should know about. First, be familiar with the Raise Your Hand button. This button is located along the left side of the control panel. It allows you to virtually raise your hand if you have a question, or if you want to respond to a question being asked by the presenter. Click this button to raise your hand now. Clicking again will lower your hand. Another important feature of the control panel is the questions pane. To submit a question or comment, type it into the question box. These may be questions related to the GoToWebinar system. You may be also asked by the presenter to type your ideas or responses here during the webinar. Please take a moment to write a note in the questions pane now. Questions or comments may be submitted at any time. These will be monitored, and we will try to respond as quickly as possible. During the webinar, you may be asked to respond to a polling question or survey. Please take the time to participate as your input and ideas are valuable to the group. Be sure to stay attentive and to interact as much as possible during the webinar. The quality of your experience depends on your attention and participation. Try to avoid the distractions of responding to emails, checking Facebook, instant messaging, or working on other tasks at your computer. If you step away for a moment, do not close the GoToWebinar window, as you will be required to log in again if you wish to rejoin the session. If you experience problems with the audio, one possible solution is to use the conference call number and listen to the presentation using your phone. Click the Use Telephone option in the audio pane of your control panel to view the conference call number. This webinar is being recorded, and the online archive will be available to view on the CAPA website in approximately 2 weeks. Kelly, I think we're ready to go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. Thank you, Katie. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on time management, personal productivity, getting more done in less time. My name is Kelly McGarrick, and I pledged CAPA at the Gamma Epsilon chapter at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm a lifetime CAPA volunteer, and I currently serve as the Fraternity Public Relations Chairman. In my real life, I'm a freelance wine, spirits, food, travel, and lifestyle writer and a wine educator. And on the line, as you know, we also have with us Katie Stovall. She's the RDC for Region 4. She'll be serving as the producer. And thank you, Katie, for helping us out this evening. I do want to give you a little full disclosure, first of all. I am not a perfect time manager. When I was coming up with the outline for this webinar, I missed the deadline and did not send it on time. However, I have challenges. I'm sure we all have challenges with time management, but I have identified some tactics that work for me. And in researching this webinar, I did find some more. So hopefully together we'll review some time management obstacles tonight, as well as discover some skills to become more effective at time management. So just a little bit about what we're going to be covering this evening. Talk about some time management resources that are out there for you. Identify some productivity thwarters and some time robbers. We'll try to identify what is and what's not working for you right now. The importance of time estimation. We all have to-do lists, but a lot of times we don't figure out how long it's going to take to do something, and that can be a big obstacle with time management. We're going to talk about something that's called the WADE formula, what that stands for and how you can use it. How to delegate effectively, and you can use this in your CAPA life and also outside of your CAPA life. Some personal preferences with regards to time management, how you work best. The art of saying no and how sometimes we just need to do that in order to maintain our sanity and a life-work-home balance. how we can tackle chronic lateness either with ourselves or with friends or family members or coworkers. Some tactics for reducing interruptions, and then some great tech tools that are out there, mostly apps that you can use to manage your time and kind of streamline things and make it a little bit easier. And as Katie said, we will be taking questions and comments throughout the webinar. So if you have any comments, best practices, questions, we will stop periodically during the webinar, and then we'll see how much time we have at the end to cover some additional ones as well. And just to let you know, rather than being CAPA specific, this webinar is going to attempt to give you some tools to improve time management skills in all aspects of your life. The purpose and the goal from the fraternity, they said they wanted me to do a webinar that's to help an advisor balance and manage time in all the roles she may serve, including advisor, other positions within CAPA, being a spouse, parent, family member, fulfilling work and career responsibilities, relationships with friends, social activities, volunteering. So really this is more of a life skills webinar than specifically CAPA skills, but certainly there are things you can use in your CAPA volunteering. I just wanted to give you some time management resources. We do have some on the CAPA website. There's CAPA Pathways, of course, and I did pull from some of that in creating this webinar. I pulled a lot from the second bullet point, which is a great book. I would recommend if you are looking for an additional resource. This is an awesome book. It's called Time Management from the Inside Out, and the author is Julie Morgenstern. Her first book was called Organizing from the Inside Out, and that's also a great one if you're looking to streamline your office, your home, physical, like get things organized. But then this one, the Time Management from the Inside Out, is wonderful as well. And I pulled a lot. You'll see a lot of the things in this webinar. I mentioned some of that I pulled from that book. And then when I was looking on Amazon last week or a couple weeks ago, I found a couple other books that I have not read, but they get awesome reviews. So again, if you're looking to delve more into the topic of time management after this webinar, those are a couple books there. And then online, great websites, mindtools.com, lifehacker.com. Great tips for time management as well as for other life skills. These are just some fun factoids here. In our lifetime, it says we spend 15 years sleeping, 7 years in the bathroom, 6 years eating, 5 to 6 years watching TV, 5 years waiting in line, 3 years in meetings, 2 years playing phone tag, though I sense maybe that one's changing since we're texting more these days. 8 months opening junk mail, and 6 months sitting at red lights, though here in Northern Virginia I feel like I spend all my time sitting at red lights. Those are just some interesting factoids. So what is thwarting our productivity? Now there's only so much time in a day, and so to find time for something new or for our own personal goals, you must be willing to take time away from something else. So let's take a look at some things maybe that inhibits our productivity, and some of these may affect you more than others do. I have on there the number one thing, I just kind of thought of some of the top of my head, and one, of course, social media, which can be a blessing and a curse. Email, phone calls, texting, distractions, interruptions, often from above. The inability to say no, and we'll talk a little bit later about the art of saying no and how you can say no. Poor time estimation, again, we'll talk about that one as well. Inability to balance our tasks, being disorganized, having too much clutter, too much paperwork, not being able to find what you need, procrastination, this is a big one of mine, feeling too overwhelmed to know where to start. Sometimes you just have so many things on your to-do list, it's just easier, you just feel like you're just totally frozen and don't know where to start. So before we get started on specific skills and techniques, let's take a look at what's working in our lives, because this can really save you time and energy, because there's no need to fix what's not broken. It also provides clues about what appeals to you and what areas need to be tweaked a little bit. So take a minute or two just to look at this list, and you can either jot down answers or just think about answers, and just think of something for each one of those bullet points. So no matter how busy I get, I always find time to blank. Just go through that list, and we'll take a minute or two and try to fill in the blanks for some of those. can look over your answers and ask yourself, why are these things working? Is it something that you really enjoy? Is it something you're very skilled at? Is it both? And then is it something that you're doing well because you're responding to some kind of outside pressure, maybe from a boss or from a superior? Or is it something that's a self-imposed pressure that you're putting on yourself, or something that you know in your heart that you want to get done, so you're putting that pressure on yourself? Does it have anything to do with the time of day? Do you find yourself that you work best in the morning? Are you fresher in the morning? Are you easier to do more difficult tasks and take on more difficult projects? Or are you a night owl? And also, are you better at solitary tasks than collaborative ones? So, for example, if I look at the bullet point that says, I'm able to tackle difficult projects when blank, I think about when I'm writing, and if I'm doing an article and I have all my sources, I have all the information I need, and it's all in front of me, and I have every resource, I don't have to waste any more time doing that, then I feel I can sit down and tackle it. So basically, if I have all the tools there, I can tackle a difficult project. So just think about what's working, and then that's something that's already working with you time management-wise. On the flip side, however, take a few minutes to ponder these questions. Again, think long and deep into all areas of your life: work, family, volunteering, personal growth, and relationships. And I'll give you a minute or two just to fill in the blanks with those. What's not working? And then for this, on this page, on this slide, the answers on this page become the list of everything you want to fix. So looking at this myself, I spend maybe too much time, as many of us do, on social media. One thing I wish I could do every day is meditate. Well, maybe I could spend less time on social media, and then I could carve out some of that time, 15 minutes or so, to meditate. So also, in looking at this list, can you identify a time in your life when you felt more in command than you do now? And think about what's changed. Are you in transition? Did you change jobs? Have you gotten married? Did you have a child? Did you take on another role, a new role within Kappa? So that transition time maybe is a reason for why something's not working and why time management maybe is out of balance. But once you know what's working and what's not, you can work then to fix it. So, for example, if you're always on time for some things but late for others, you do have the capacity to be on time, and you're choosing consciously or unconsciously when to use it. So where does my time go? This is a really, really useful exercise to create a log for a few days to see where your specific time robbers are. And I have a link there. It's a rather long link. But if you just go to Google and you search for time log or create a time log, there are lots of sites on the internet where you can find a log like this and print it out. But what you can do is just track what you're doing at any given time throughout the day, and then how useful is it? You see there the effectiveness. Is it high, average, or low? Is it useful? Is it helping you achieve your goals? The purpose and project, this specific log has more instructions on the link that's on the screen. But again, you can find these all over the web. But it's a really useful exercise to see where your time is going. I found this interesting article on CBS.com. It's 6 things that feel productive but aren't. And you may find that you're putting some of these on that time log as you go through your day. Number 1 is the pursuit of inbox zero. And I find myself doing this often. I'm sure a lot of you do as well, where you have full inbox. Your goal is just to clear out that inbox, to just get down to no unread emails. Well, what happens? If you're responding to them and you're working on that, then people start responding back to you. So that inbox of 0 unread messages lasts for like all of 5 minutes, and then it becomes this elusive goal that you really can never grasp. So obviously we have to check our inbox at times, but if you spend all that time processing and responding to all your emails rather than focusing on the ones that matter, that represents a big opportunity cost. The second one they mentioned are meetings just called to share information. So unless something's changed, if it's an FYI, it might be a waste of time. Reading articles online. Now, you may be reading articles for a purpose, maybe for your job or for CAPA or for something else, but a lot of times, we sit there, we're surfing the web, we're reading something online, it looks like we're doing something constructive, but we're looking at the screen, so it makes it look like we're doing something productive. But maybe just get up, walk around, get some water, get some fresh air instead. This one I couldn't relate to so much, but I guess there are people that feel compelled to clean the same thing every day. Maybe they vacuum every morning, and even during that crazy time of getting up and going to work and getting kids out to school. So it says what they said was, sure, the house eventually needs to be cleaned, but it will just get dirty again, and you'll never get that time back. I'm definitely on board with that one. The next one, pointless perfectionism. So maybe good enough is good enough. And then lastly, failing to acknowledge that you're stuck. So if you can't solve something with the information in front of you, if you're just spinning your wheels staring at the same information, it's really not helping anybody. So either work on something else or find somebody that can help you move forward. Oops. And then Julia Morgenstern in her book, The Organizing from the Time Management from the Inside Out, talks about time robbers. And she breaks them down into 3 separate sections. One is logistical issues, one is external realities, and one is psychological obstacles. And she talks about having a home for your tasks. And what she means by that is you haven't set aside a specific time for it. So maybe you know you need to do X, but it's not filled anywhere in on your schedule. So it just kind of remains that random to-do, sticky note thing that's never going to get done because you don't have a time for it. Number 2, you set aside the wrong time. So she says to work with, not against, your natural rhythms, whether that's in the morning, late at night, or maybe you're a middle of the afternoon type person. So work with those natural rhythms. You've miscalculated how long the job's going to take, and next we're going to get into time estimation and how important that is with time management. Number 4, you're the wrong person for the job, and asking for help can be liberating, and delegating it to the correct person who has the skills can be extremely liberating. The task is overly complex, so if you can simplify it into smaller, more manageable steps, it might be a lot easier to swallow. Number 6, you can't remember what you have to do, in which case a planner, an organizer, or some app will help you. Number 7, your space is disorganized, so start by organizing the room where you spend the most amount of time, because that's going to really give you the most bang for your buck. You didn't allow for any planning time. So take a few minutes to step back, evaluate priorities, and plan exactly how to get things done. And then lastly, if you have an unrealistic workload, work on getting rid of extraneous tasks, and we'll talk about that WADE system, how that will help you do that. Streamline, delegate, maybe lower your standards. Again, good enough can be good enough. And I know that's hard for the perfectionists among us, but sometimes it really is good enough. A few external realities. These might be a little less, these are more out of your control than maybe the others. So you may have some health problems that limit your energy, so you need to make adjustments for that, whether it's a temporary or a permanent situation. You are in transition, so a good suggestion for that is to reground yourself. Identify 1 or maybe 2 activities that always seem to anchor you, and be sure to build in time for those. And then, as you go through this transition, build a new framework around those grounding activities that will accommodate your new lifestyle. This is going to keep you grounded, keep you just a little more, just keep you sane as you're going through that transition. Number 3, you have too many interruptions and distractions. So acknowledge and plan for it, leave plenty of time. And then create a little, if you can, a little oasis for yourself. So maybe put your phone on voicemail, ask someone to fill in for you for a little bit, or maybe wake up a little bit earlier each day to have a little bit more time for something you'd like to get done, or just even some, me time. And then, of course, we have to deal with other people's chaos, which we really can't control. Maybe your boss is just extremely disorganized, or always late, or just a poor time manager. So a good thing is to just identify your common goal. So if it's your boss, your common goal is you're both trying to make the company as successful as possible. If it's your spouse, you're both trying to run the household successfully. And try to brainstorm together. But if that fails, you really just want to make sure to protect your own schedule and accept others' quirks, and realize the only thing you can really control is your response and how you respond to other people's chaos, because we really can't control their chaos. And then the last the last section of time robbers is psychological obstacles. So if you have unclear goals and priorities, if you have a fear of failure or a fear of success, identify that, recognize that. Do you have a fear of downtime? Do you feel guilty if you have downtime? My husband suffers from this. He feels like he needs to be doing something, and if he's just relaxing, that's like a, quote, waste of time. The need to be a caretaker or to always say yes to everything. A fear of completion. Some people hate to make choices because they feel that that closes off other choices, but it helps to keep reminding yourself there'll always be more opportunities and more projects in the future. The need for perfection or approval, fear of criticism, humiliation, or rash judgment. Sometimes we just have to let it go. And then lastly, the notion that you fear that a structure will stifle your creativity. But actually, the flip side can actually be true, because if you have a little bit of structure, it can be liberating. Because if your structure is too free-form, you might never get around to really what you want to do, what's most important. But some structure will let you have the freedom to get to do what you want to do along with what needs to be done. So at this point, I'm going to break for a minute, see if we have any comments or questions. Katie?
No, I don't have any right now, but I am
All right.
a little shocked at how much time I'm going to be spending opening up junk mail.
Okay. We are going to move on, and we're going to move on to what I think is one of the best points in Julie Morgenstern's book, and it's about time estimation. And it's so common. We all do it. We make to-do lists. We might have it on a sticky note, or we might have it in our Google Calendar or Gmail tasks or our planner organizer. We make these to-do lists, but a lot of times we don't take into account how long each task will take, and this is really a big oversight. So ask when you're making that to-do list, ask how long to do, not just what do I need to do. So why aren't we doing this? She proposes that a lot of times it's a fear of discovering that we suffer from a lack of time, and if you actually wrote down and added up all the minutes that are needed for all of the tasks, you just wouldn't have enough hours in the day. So it could be that fear. But it could also be, on the flip side, wishful thinking that we'll be able to get it all done. It's fine. We don't need to figure out how long, because somehow it will all get done. However, if we consistently miscalculate how much time we need for tasks, can lead to a couple negative repercussions. One is we'll bite off more than we can chew. We'll have just kind of overwhelming, constant feelings of defeat and procrastination, because we're going to put off doing things because we don't think we have enough time to get them done. So also remember that we tend to over or underestimate the time it takes to complete a task based on how we feel about that task. So you might say, okay, well, I'm going to be on social media. I'm only going to be on there for 15 minutes. Well, maybe an hour goes by. Then you think about, okay, well, I'm going to do the dishes. Gosh, it's probably going to take an hour, because you hate doing it. You know, I don't like doing the dishes. I don't like doing laundry. But so you overestimate how long something is going to take if you don't like to do it, but you'll underestimate how long it's going to take if you do like to do it. So keep that in mind. So there are some ways we can become better time estimators. 2 exercises that you can specifically try. One is to take 3 tasks on which you procrastinate, and then log how long you think it's going to take you to do that task, and then how long it actually takes you to do that task. And do it 3 times for each task, and see if you notice any patterns, or if you're consistently, are you nailing the time, or are you all over the place with regards to estimating and doing it. So that's one exercise. And another one is similar, related. If you're using a planner or a calendar or an app, for 1 week, jot down how long you think each task will take, and then write down the actual time. So again, look for patterns in areas you underestimated or overestimated. And also, don't forget to factor in these hidden time costs. So if it's a task that involves traveling somewhere, think about it. Are you going in rush hour? Are you taking public transportation? Is the train usually late? Do you have to, how far is the parking from the building? Do you have to take an elevator? Do you have to sign in or register or talk with a receptionist? Is there setup time that's needed? Do you have to gather your materials, lay them out, get yourself oriented to the project? And then when you're done, do you have to put everything away, remember where you left off, figure what you're going to do the next time you sit down to this particular project? Is it a project that needs some what's called stewing time or thinking time, where you have to kind of ponder it before you can move on to the next step? Do you know you're going to have interruptions? You probably will. So build in some time so that 1 or 2 interruptions won't throw off your entire schedule. Unexpected problems time, when in fact when in doubt, factor in like 15 to 20%, because the Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong kind of thing. And then for some time for yourself, refreshment times, going to the bathroom, stretching, getting a drink or a snack. Those are all hidden time costs that when we're estimating the to-dos, we would a lot of times forget to factor those in. Okay, so next slide is about multitasking. I feel like we've all been taught that multitasking is something that's viewed as good. It shows you're successful and you can do it all and you can juggle so many things. So multitasking can actually distract you and slow you down. So if you find that you're not a good multitasker, and that's nothing that's to be ashamed of, because again, it's very difficult to multitask, and it might not always be so effective. What you can try instead, and this is something that I do a lot in more my real life than my capital life, but I work in little chunks, little blocks. So what you can do, and this really works well if you don't know how to start a task. If you feel like, gosh, I got to sit down, there's this huge project, I have to start it, I just don't know where to start. Well, if you sit down and tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to work on it for 15 minutes, that feels manageable. No matter how big it is, no matter what you have to do, if you're just committing yourself to 15 minutes, it seems more manageable. So block off 15 minutes to focus on that task. And set a timer if you need to on your computer or on your, if you're working in your kitchen, on your oven, your stove, or your watch, whatever, your phone. And then once you've increased your concentration, increase the time to 30, 45, or 60 minutes per task. And if you find yourself on a roll and you don't want to switch, add on a little bit more time if you feel that it's working for you. You're not ready to switch gears yet. But once you discover what your set point is for concentration, your productivity will probably increase, because you'll be able to break down your tasks into manageable chunks and know how long that you're going to be working on each chunk. So I find this to be more efficient than multitasking, just kind of working in chunks and timing yourself and switching gears. And again, you can always increase the time if you feel like you're on a roll, but if you're stuck, then once that 15 minutes or 20 minutes is up and the timer goes off, then you can move on to something else and come back to it a little bit later. Maybe, your brain will kind of subconsciously think it over, mull it over, stew a little bit, and then you'll be ready to move back to it later on that day. Okay, now next we're going to talk about the WAVE formula, which is also another tool from Julie Morgenstern. And this is an acronym for 4 different things. So the W stands for write it down. So record everything you have to do in one location that's reliable. So whether that's an actual physical paper planner or an app or a to-do pad or your Google Calendar, whatever works for you. Add it up. So again, go back to the time estimation. Estimate how long each task will take, and if there are large tasks, large projects, again, break them down into smaller parts for easier calculation, because it's a lot easier to figure out how 10 different steps of a project, how long each one's going to take, than just looking at one huge project and trying to estimate how long that's going to take. And then the D is decide what you'll actually do. So if you feel overloaded, you can elect to apply the 4 Ds, which are delete, delay, delegate, or diminish. So delete. Just take a look. What's really important? Ask yourself what absolutely does not have to get done right now. And even more dramatically, would your life change drastically, or would anyone else be hurt if these things don't get done? If no, maybe cross them off. Or delay it. Can it wait? Can it be postponed until another hour, day, or week? Diminish the task. Is it good enough? And then delegate the task, which we'll get to delegation in a minute. And then the E stands for execute your plan. Put it into action without being hindered by procrastination or perfectionism. So write it down, add it up, decide, execute, the WADE formula. Now, as CAPA volunteers, I know we're all pretty familiar with delegation, either on being somebody who's delegating, or being on the other side, being the delegatee or the delegator. So just some tips here for effective delegation. Number 1, many of us have trouble with this one. Don't fall into the I can do it quicker and better syndrome. Perhaps, but if you do, you're not really managing, and you're going to stay stuck in a rut, keep your volunteers in a rut too, and it also leads to that feeling of being overwhelmed and overworked and overloaded. Clarify the task in your own mind. Visualize what the finished product or task would look like. This is really important, because sometimes you might be disappointed with the work that your delegatees return, but maybe you weren't really clear on what you wanted from them. Number 3, write an outline of sketch or what you want to just really help you clarify it. Have the person that you delegate to write out the instructions you give verbally, maybe asking them to repeat what you heard so you can make sure you're being clear. Back to the don't be a perfectionist one. Put a due date and time on your request, maybe log tasks on an assignment tracking sheet. Follow up. Don't wait until right before the due date to see if she needs everything she needs. Follow up, and this I find myself doing all the time also in, again, my real life. As a writer, I'm constantly, at any given time, I have emails out to 20 different sources who need to respond to me, for my deadlines. And if I wait to the day before my articles are due, and then I realize, oh my gosh, so-and-so didn't get back to me, then my work's going to be late. So follow up well before the due date so that you have time in case she's running into problems or she just doesn't have time to get things done, or you can delegate it to somebody else. Acknowledge good jobs, no matter how small, and empower them to use a method that works for them. Okay, and as you're using the Wade method, you can figure out your natural preferences. So if you take a look at this chart, on each line, you can see which one you think is preferable, the item on the left or the one on the right. So I'll give you a minute to take a look at these and see if you can notice any patterns or if you're all over the place. But decide for each line, the left or the right, which one is your preference. And the point of this chart really is to stop trying to fight who you are. So pay attention to your natural rhythms, accept them, pay attention to what works for you. So, and for example, let's say you like the one that says tight deadlines or long lead times. Let's say you are a person that likes tight deadlines, and I do. I tend to be a procrastinator. I think it's common. A lot of people are, and I have a lot of friends that say, oh, I work best on last minute when I'm right before the deadline. And I kind of feel that way to a certain extent. But if you do like tight deadlines, tell yourself that for example, let's say, tell yourself you have to finish something by noon. And then to make sure that you finish that task by noon, schedule something critically important right afterwards so you stick to that deadline. Because otherwise, if it's just a self-imposed deadline, you say, oh yeah, I have to finish this by noon. If noon comes and goes and there's no repercussion and the afternoon continues on, it's really not going to make you stick to that tight deadline. But if you schedule something, whether that's a conference call, an appointment, you're going to go to the gym and take a class, you're going to do something it's important or even more critically important after that, then you're going to be sure to stick to that tight deadline and get that done by noon. So again, just think about what your natural rhythms are and your preferences and work with them, not against them. And then find your unique energy boosters. And these are going to help you stay focused for longer. So whether that's exercising, stretching, music, taking a glass of water, a cat nap, a snack, find something that works for you. This is also a great way. We talked before about doing those 15-minute bursts, or if it's 15 or 20 or 30-minute bursts of tasks and then switching to something else. These are all good segues. If you're working on something for 20 minutes, do one of these and then move on to a different task or a different project. They really work that way as well. It's a good segue. It's also a good break. All right, so we've all been there. Someone asks us to do something, and we so want to say no, but we find ourselves saying yes. So we talk about how it is okay to say no. This is a good quote. Stress is when your gut says no and your mouth says yes. Recognize it is your right to say no. Doesn't, of course, need to be rude or abrupt. It can be perfectly polite and considerate. You're not obligated ever as to go on at length as to why. And in fact, if you do, it can make you just feel a little guilty or anxious or nervous, and it can also lead other people to then come back with a retort of, well, we can solve that problem. If you're saying you can't do it because of this, then I can propose this. So it can just be very brief and to the point, no. So, and you can practice it in front of a mirror saying, I'm sorry, I just can't, and no. And if you have a problem with it, just practice that in front of a mirror with confidence and clarity until it becomes natural. You can also propose a compromise. So, for example, if somebody wants you to do something and you have something else to do, you could say, well, I know you want me to do X, which is going to take about 5 hours, and I need to do Y, which is going to take about 6 hours. The challenge is I can't do both. So which is more important to you? Or can someone else take at least a piece of one of these projects? Or can we wait a day on one of these? So try to find some kind of compromise. This is just some verbiage you can use in different situations. To decline an invitation, thank you for thinking of me. I'd love to attend, but I have a prior commitment. To a volunteer organization, that sounds like a great project, and I'm flattered you think I'm the best person for the job to handle it, but I'm just too busy to do it justice right now. My schedule is already jammed. And what I like about that one is it recognizes, you're showing them and telling them that you have the ability to do that project. You just don't have the time right now. So it doesn't make you look like a failure that you can't do it. You just are not able to handle it with your current workload. So I really like the way that's worded. And then to someone who just keeps insisting, just smile and say, I'm sorry, I can't, no thank you, no. Again, don't over-explain or you may be outmaneuvered. They might come back with a reason why they can get you, how they can get you to do it. So less is more when saying no. All right, so chronic lateness. You may be somebody who's late. You may know people that are always late. And the first thing you want to ask yourself, or if it's about yourself or somebody else, are you late by differing amounts of every time, or are you always late by the same amount of time? So if you're late by differing amounts of time each time, then it might just be a question of time estimation, which we talked about before, estimating how long tasks are going to take. You're just underestimating how long you think something is going to take, or overestimating. So you can work on that. If it's always the same amount of time, I've read that it says that there may be a psychological root to that. So you're showing up when you want to. So ask yourself, why do you want to be late? And I do realize that there are regional or cultural differences. They may come into play as well. To conquer it, improve those time estimating skills. So until you get better at it, build in a cushion of time. You can plan on getting there somewhere 15 minutes early and reading. I know some people suggest setting clocks ahead 10 minutes, but if you're a person who has a fear of downtime and doesn't want to sit there and do nothing, then that's not going to work for you. But avoid the just one more task syndrome. So learn to minimize interruptions and don't take on too much. Find your motivation to be on time. Is your boss a punitive boss? Do you hate missing out? Would you hate to be late because you're going to miss the beginning of the movie or the beginning of the party or the event? Do you hate inconveniencing your friends? Does that bother you? Have something great to do while you wait. So if you do get there early, be sure to fill any waiting time with something that's highly absorbing and very engaging. So maybe call a friend, catch up on a book that you've been wanting to read, listen to music, people watch. This is going to reward you for being early. And lastly, understand why lateness upsets others. So step inside other people's shoes. Everyone is super busy these days, and it's no longer fashionable to be late. It's really more rude and disrespectful to keep others waiting. Okay, interruptions. A lot of times this is just something we can't avoid, but in order to reduce them, and we're not going to eliminate them, but this is also going to be a time robber, these interruptions that just eat away at our project. So let people know you're going to be unavailable. Use the unavailable feature in your social media or your email. Use the out-of-office assistant, or just tell them, I'm not going to be available. Hire childcare, even if you're at home. Consider getting a mother's helper. Let your voicemail take your calls. Fight that curiosity. So I read a statistic that we are more efficient with our outgoing phone calls versus our incoming phone calls. So if you let your phone go to voicemail, if you call somebody back, on average that phone call will be 7 minutes long, versus if you would have answered that phone call in the first place, that would have been 11 minutes long. So our outgoing calls are 7 minutes versus incoming, which are 11, which I think is interesting. Ditto with fighting your curiosity to text. So we are programmed to hear that text notification on our phone, whatever that's set to be, and we want to read it and respond to it immediately because its very immediate nature hurts us. So it probably can wait. Social media, don't check it every 5 minutes. Turn it off. When I'm working on something, I turn off Facebook, I turn off Twitter, because when you see that little notification, that little one, in the tab, and somebody has commented on something that you posted, you just want to read it, so just turn it off. Schedule time to read and respond to emails. If you are having quiet hours, find logical times. So early in the morning, late at night, while everyone is at lunch, not while everybody is underfoot. This number 8 sounds a little mean. It says avoid eye contact, but if you really are trying to get something done, maybe in line, at the bank, or on a plane, be absorbed in what you're doing and don't make eye contact. Now, if you just want to be friendly and chat with somebody and don't want to get anything done, then of course. But found that if you're engrossed in what you're doing, then you're probably not going to get sucked into that 4-hour conversation all the way, your entire plane ride. And then schedule regular meeting times for communication. That could be your office hours as an advisor or as a CAPA volunteer. And I know I've talked a lot about how technology can really be a time thwarter and a time robber, but the next thing I'm going to give you are some great time management tech tools, some of which I use, others that I just found in a list on, I think it was on lifehacker.com. But these can really help you in time management. And the first one is Rescue Time. This one I don't use, but it's supposed to be a really great app to let you track your time and find your time robbers. So it does a lot of what we talked about in this, finding those things that are robbing your time and taking away from tasks and projects you need to be doing. So that's called Rescue Time. Remember the Milk. I know this is a pretty popular one. This helps you manage tasks and send reminders, and you can sync it with all of your devices, and that's also a free app. And I use that one, and it's a really helpful app, very user-friendly too. Dropbox, very useful for sharing large files. I use this every single day to share large image files with my editors. It's just an easy way to send large files, whether they're PowerPoints or images or videos. Evernote, if you find that you're a multimedia kind of person and you maybe make reminders, you use the voice recorder on your phone and do voice reminders or voice to-do lists, and you also do notes and you do images. This is a multimedia app, so it really captures all of your ideas with voice, notes, and images. There's an app called Toggle, and that allows you to track how much time you spend on different projects, and it can show you percentages, so you can see if you're spending too much time on one project, not enough on another. So if you're working on a lot of different things and trying to do that elusive multitasking, Toggle is a great app to have. There's an app called My Life Organized, and that one helps you target what to focus on to reach your goals. So if you have, let's say you have really one or a couple large goals, and there are steps you need to take to get to them, this is going to make sure you stay on track with those large goals. The Universal Password Manager is a great app to help keep all those pesky passwords organized, because if you're wasting time, if you're trying to log into a website or a software or something and you can't remember your password, that's going to waste time. That's going to be a time robber for you. This is also a great one, and I know there are other apps like this one, Pocket Free. I think one of the problems with social media is, let's say we're on Twitter and we're going through our Twitter feed or Facebook or any of them, and we find an interesting link to an article, and you want to stop right then and there and you want to read that article. Well, right there's a time robber, because you might not have time to do that. So what Pocket Free does, and other similar apps, is it lets you save and bookmark really cool things you find online so you can read them when you have more time. So when you're sitting there early, if you're working on your chronic lateness and you decide to get to your doctor's appointment 15 minutes early and sit there, you can catch up on some of those articles and other things you found online using Pocket Free and read them. And then Memo to Me, I've also used this one. It's a free email reminder service, and there are also similar services. If you find that you would like text reminders, you can get, there are apps that allow you to send text reminders if there's something you just absolutely have to remember to do and you're afraid you're going to forget to do it. But Memo to Me is an email reminder service. And then, of course, Gmail and Google, so we can use our labels in Gmail so we can really organize and categorize things to help us find them and organize them and retrieve them later on. And our calendar, where you can, of course, set pop-ups and reminders as well. Katie, any questions or comments?
No, I don't have any, but I do have another program that I like to use.
Please, yes. Oh, yes, go ahead. Explain that one.
It's a lot like Evernote, but it's like a 3-wing spiral notebook you would have had in high school, and you can
Okay.
drag and drop things wherever you want and reorganize as you go.
Awesome. And that's called OneNote.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have this quote here, and it's kind of along the lines of what we've been talking about. So the key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. And I think with time management, certainly there are things that we have to get done. There are things that we want to get done. We looked at what's working and what's not. We looked at some of those sorters, but I think this is a kind of a good quote to tie it all together. So I'm going to hang out here for a minute, see if there are any questions or comments. As Katie mentioned, we're going to be archiving this webinar within a couple weeks. You can always feel free to, if you have any follow-up questions or comments, or if you didn't understand something that I said, you can feel free to email me. My address is kellymkkg@gmail.com. And Katie, let me know if anything comes in.
I don't have anything yet.
All right.
But I think we'll go ahead and wrap up, and they can reach out if they have.
That sounds great.
Specific.
All right. Well, thank you so much for participating. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule this evening to be with us for time management. And I hope you found a couple tools and tips and techniques to use in your lives. So thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Kelly, for leading, and thank you everyone on the line for your participation today. As we close the webinar, a survey is going to pop up on your screen. You'll be prompted to respond to a few evaluation questions. Please take a moment to share your thoughts on today's webinar. Your feedback will help us shape future webinar training events. Have a great evening.